Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Coffee Break, and welcome back to the CoffeeCast ProCast. We are going to be featuring WhiteRa versus whoever I randomly pull up out of his Korean replay pack. I didn't even know that this was another Zerg player. So, yet another PvZ for WhiteRa. Found that it was not exactly his strongest suit in his last game. However, he did do kind of an odd strategy, took a little bit of a hit early on, and was able to recover in the end to go back and win that game. In this game, we are going to see him forge fast expand, which is already something different than he was doing in his previous game, I can tell you now. So going for something a little bit more standard, just trying out new things. That's something I always love about WhiteRa's play, is that he's not afraid to go ahead and try different kind of things, and if it fails, sometimes he'll try it again, try to refine it a little bit more, do something a little bit different with it, and then other times he'll just laugh and go, ha, that didn't work, and, blow it off and go ahead and go into his next game, and maybe, do something standard, just kind of get himself back on track. Our Zerg player down here is going to be, once again, just our blue Zerg player. Going to be kind of an ambiguous figure. No real name because I cannot read Korean, unfortunately. That is kind of on my to-do list in the next, 60 years of my life or so. I'll get around to it eventually. Once again, one thing that I really love about WhiteRa, always very, very on top of his chrono boost. Always his chrono boosting his probes out, especially in the early game. Even when he has the option of chrono boosting gateways to get an early unit or two out, maybe deny scouting with a stalk or something, foregoes that and goes ahead and continues to chrono boost his Nexus. Very, very good to get a nice little economy in that early game, because you never want to fall behind your opponent in that ride. It looks like we are just going to see a Zergling expand, no speed for the moment, as we do not have a Vespian Geyser on the field yet for our Zerg player. And I don't know, I wouldn't say that's uncommon, I wouldn't say it's surprising at all. I always prefer, when I do randomly play Zerg, I am a Protoss player as a main, but when I do play Zerg and I go up against a Protoss, I will go ahead and do that speedling expand. That's my favorite just because it's the safest. But this guy, I guarantee you, he's playing WhiteRa on the Korean ladder. I think he knows what he's doing for certain. WhiteRa is going to be having this Nexus on the way, a little bit over halfway done. I think just a little bit ahead of, nope, just a little bit behind that hatchery. So both these bases actually going to finish up relatively the same at the same time here. Fairly early expansion out of WhiteRa. I wouldn't say it's insanely early or anything. It's not a 17 Nexus, but it is going to be nice and on par with our Zerg player. We do have this nice little wall going up here. Cannon to defend against that. I actually, I don't know how I feel about this cannon placement. I do like having a cannon here. However, I think having a cannon lower would have been a little bit better early on. Maybe not though, because this does defend this nice little gap here where Zerglings would begin running by. So I'm actually just crazy. I do like that cannon placement. I'm going to go ahead and ramble for a little bit. We do have our Zerg player going for a very quick third base. The reason I do find this surprising, this is very, very common. Maybe a little bit less common than staying on 2 base for a little bit longer. Normally you'll see this probably around that 6-minute mark. This is fairly common though. The reason I'm a little bit surprised to see this is the fact that it is on Tal'Darim Altar. This third base is kind of out in the middle of nowhere because you can't take your natural third. There are rocks here. So it's a little bit difficult to secure early on in the game. And it looks like this probe is actually going to be able to scout that right away. WhiteRa loves punishing these kind of builds where you go for that really fast third. So this base is going to be in a little bit of danger. Going to want to get a queen down there as soon as possible. And actually, one thing I would love to see, one thing TLO would do, my hero Zerg player TLO, would get some creep coming, make a creep tumor do right here, and just kind of spread it down to his base. He loves to get lots and lots of queens. If you've ever seen TLO play, it is an honor to watch him. I'd love to see a couple of extra warp gates dropped down fairly soon here, a couple of extra gateways, just as about that warp gate technology is about halfway complete. That's kind of like that nice timing when you will be able to get your gateways finishing just as your warp gates finish up. +1 on the way as well. The reason I say that is because I would love to see WhiteRa try to hit this base relatively early on, punish it before it really gets too many returns, maybe even get a few free drone kills over in that area. And I see a little bit of blue in here. Where is it? There it is, just an Overlord. I was looking for a Zergling. And it actually looked like we found the sword in the stone right here. Just thought I would point that out. I love the little doodads. that are in all of these maps. Those are actually kind of some of my favorite features in the maps. It's what sets good maps apart from really kind of boring and lesser bland maps, I guess I would call them. Is I love having little doodad features. Look at this stalker micro. It was down to 0 shield left and then got away from those Zerglings. That's very, very nice play. Zergling's actually going to be able to scout out this pylon. Nice map awareness by our Zerg player, making a lot of Zerglings going to go ahead and try to defend this base. That pylon is going to go up. Gateways not quite into warp gates quite yet, it looks like. Just this one gateway turning into a warp gate. I believe this pylon is going to go down. Yes, indeed. The probe was able to secure another pylon area, however. A lot of Zerglings on the map, though. This Stalker's just going to have to run. If it turns around and shoots, it might get surrounded. The Zealot also going to be in a bad position. Just going to go ahead, wow, just backing up into a corner right before he dies so that he can get a couple of extra kills real fast. I'm going to go ahead and get these 2 pylons up. 2 pylons, just as a little bit of redundancy. Get 4 Zealots out, and it's going to be kind of a close battle. The Zerglings do get surrounded, but the Zealots with that +1 upgrade, so good against Zerglings, and actually is going to be able to take care of all of those Zerglings with just 4 Zealots, and probably going to be able to clean up this little mess as well. But now, here we go, more Zerglings coming in, but more Zealots coming in. It's going to be kind of a close call in that right. We do have a double Stargate on the field somewhere. I see 2 Void Rays coming out. Where is that? I have no idea. There are the 3 Zealots have managed to hold off once again over here. Where the heck is those Stargates? There they are. There are these 2 Stargates sitting out here next to this natural expansion. Double Void Ray production on the way. There is lair tech on the field, so Hydralisks are a complete possibility. Another thing that's a possibility is going to go ahead and be just that evolution chamber. Get some spore crawlers out on the field. I do not see one quite yet for our Zerg player, so he could be in a little bit of danger from these Void Rays. Fortunately for him, the Hydralisk Den does only take, I believe, 40 seconds to create. It is not very long at all. WhiteRa, once again, going to be trying to put pressure on this expansion. Very, very far behind in that supply count, but that's just due to the roaches coming at. You can actually see him, even though his opponent is on 3 bays, sticking up with that probe count with lots and lots of chrono boosts on those probes. And just kind of making sure he keeps up with his probes. Actually cutting probes for a little bit right now. A little bit of a blunder on his part. Where are the Void Rays? They're just kind of grouping up over here. There are 3 on the field. There are going to be 5 on the field fairly shortly. And that's going to be absolutely devastating to this composition that our Zerg player currently has. Trying to warp in more and more Zealots. Just keeping his Zerg opponent distracted as long as possible. Here come these 3 Void Rays coming over to the Zerg natural expansion. The guise is up now. The Zerg player knows exactly where these Void Rays are, what they are, and how many there are. And it's actually going to be a little bit too late. A lot of damage is going to be sustained before the Zerg player can get a nice reaction. There are going to be these 3 support crawlers coming down here, 5 more in another place, and there we go, that Hydra's dead. However, once again, damage will be sustained until he can get that anti-air out. It looks like he's just going to go for the counter-attack. That is a brilliant maneuver on his part. As WhiteRa, well, I guess he is walled off fairly nice here, going to be dropping a lot of cannons. He knows the counter-attack is going to be coming. Void Rays, fully charged for a moment, going to actually get discharged as they come over here to this phase. Going to be engaging in this Spore Crawler one-on-one, pulling that Void Ray back again on 0 shields with only 2 damage being taken. Beautiful by WhiteRa. These Roaches and Zerglings all are up in position to begin attacking here. And 5 Void Rays now down in this base. There is 1 Void Ray very, very low on health. Needs to be very careful not to get that taken out by a Spore Crawler. 1 Void Ray does go down, another one going down as well. Third one might go down fairly shortly as well. Roaches are beginning to assault into the space. I don't know if WhiteRa's going to be able to hold this off. It's going to be kind of a close call. There is a sentry here for a force field. However, all that can do is really stop them from getting into space. These Roaches can still try to go ahead and take out this cybernetic core. 1 Void Ray is over here to defend. We do have a 2nd Void Ray coming out to help defend as well. WhiteRa should be just fine. However, losing that cybernetic core is going to set him back quite a bit later on in this game. He does have 4 Void Rays on the field, so he does have these 2 plus 2 more probably down here somewhere. Yes, indeed. He's going to go ahead and be working in the main field. However, with the Hydralisk on the field, not going to be able to do too much more damage down there. The Roaches are into the probe line of WhiteRa, going to be starting to do a little bit of damage. Roaches taking a little bit, and one thing I would like to note is when the Roaches are close enough to their opponents, they actually do a melee attack. It does the same amount of damage, but just a cool little feature by Blizzard to go ahead and add that in. Pulling the probes down to his natural expansion a little bit late. There are a couple of Zerglings in this mineral line as well, and it looks like our Zerg player actually going to be in a fairly good position. WhiteRa did get quite a few drones himself, however. We can see 11 to 9 workers killed over in the production income tab. 40 to 38 harvesters, just slightly in favor of our Zerg opponent. Those Void Rays, I think, are still down here somewhere, as I can see that drone count dropping slowly for our Zerg player. What is going on? He must be building buildings. Indeed, that is what he's doing. Spore crawlers going down. I do not know exactly where those Void Rays went. It looks like here he is. The one lone Void Ray surviving from that attack. There's one more over here, actually. 17 kills on that Void Ray. In fact, all these Void Rays, quite a few kills. 4, 9, 15, and another 18. My goodness, that is going to be a lot, because I know not to try to do math while live casting. That's something that Husky said, and I kind of blew it off when I first started casting, and then realized it's totally true. You just can't do math while you're live casting. And we do have this Spore Crawler trying to reposition itself at kind of an inopportune time. However, with these Hydras on the field, these Void Rays are not going to be able to do all that much damage. Going to go ahead and have to fall back. And once again, just like in the last game, WhiteRa finds himself in kind of this awkward position where he doesn't really have anything to deal with these Hydralisks. In the last game, he just used Blink Stalkers to counter those. The Blink Stalkers do soft counter those Hydralisks. However, there is no Blink on the field, and not even a Cybernetics core on the field at this point in time. WhiteRa in a very nasty position. I don't know how exactly he's going to be able to pull out of this one. A lot of Zealots on the ground are going to be able to help with those Hydralisks. If those were charge lots, I could actually say that this would be a fairly decent composition. However, I'm still a little bit worried for our Protoss hero in this game. Grooved Spines is going to be coming out, and it's going to be that +1 or +2 range. I think it's +1 range for the Hydralisk, frying away at a couple of extra units as they retreat. And now that actually the air defense is starting to dwindle just a little bit for the Zerg player. 4 Void Rays on the field, quite a bit going on right there. Focusing down everything that can shoot into the air. Going to lose 1 Void Ray as a result of it. Not able to micro that back because he's too worried about trying to keep these Zealots alive for the moment. However, the Void Rays are still alive. 2 more Void Rays on the field. He is really, really committing to this. I love that play decision by WhiteRa. Once again, the only thing I regret is that he is not doing anything to try to counter these Hydralisks at the time. Phoenixes, I feel like, would be a slightly better option. Maybe trying to go in and snipe that Hydralisk den. Once again, another counterattack coming from our Zerg player. Not going to be able to do too much with these 2 extra Void Rays back here to reinforce. But as Dana always says, if you're going to do something and it's just kind of not working, commit. Just keep barreling those units down your opponent's throat until it is too much for them to handle. And that is kind of a nice way to handle things a lot of time, actually. And these Void Rays are proving that to us now. He is just committed to throwing as many Void Rays into his opponent's throat as humanly possible. Still not up on a 3rd base, very, very late in the game to not try to take a 3rd base. However, I just feel like he couldn't really defend it at this point in time, which is probably his reasoning for that. But I like how aggressive he's been with these Void Rays as well. He pokes in every once in a while, and if he sees a bunch of Hydralisks, he does fall out trying to find a different position. A lot of the time, he will just go ahead and engage. We do see 6 Void Rays running down here right now. A lot of Zealots being warped in on this left side now, too. And that's just going to be able to do a nice little bit of damage to this base over here. Coming in, going to take out that Spine Crawler and then probably go straight into that hatchery there. Void Rays on the right side, once again coming in and going to try to do a little bit of damage over here on the right side. Roaches and Hydras are going to be completely out of the position to defend against those Void Rays. There go the Hydras going in the opposite direction, frying away at drones. I would actually be focusing down this Hydras den just to try to set my opponent off just a little bit. And there we go, now going to start charging up on the Hydras den. And Hydras versus full charged Void Rays is going to be a nasty spectacle for our Zerg player. I don't know if he's going to have the forces to take this out, and just look at how quickly those Hydralisks are dying. There's nothing that our Zerg player can do against these right now. There are 5 Hydralisks here. I don't know if it's going to quite be enough. It's going to be kind of close. They are going to get 1 Void Ray shooting so fast. They do so much damage, full damage to those areas. And WhiteRa deciding that he cannot engage. There's 2 more Void Rays coming onto the field, however. He did once again manage to get that Hydra's den, so there's going to be no anti-air coming onto the field for a little bit. And once again, found that he wasn't able to do much against his Zerg opponent in that main base anymore. Coming out here, decides to pick off an Overlord. That is just a beautiful play by WhiteRa. We see over here that the Zealot attack did fail. It was cleaned up by those roaches, the Spine Crawler, and the Queen, but the Queen did lose its life for that. A few of the roaches do remain, however. And now, this kind of ragtag band of Zerg forces are going to start pushing out across the map, rallying in the middle. I don't really think that they can do all that much damage right now, however, because these Void Rays back for the defense are going to be able to help out quite a bit with this ground army of WhiteRa. I would love to see charge for these Zealots once again, since these been putting so many of his minerals into that, I think it would definitely be worth it to spend a little bit extra gas to go ahead and get that charge upgrade. Zerg player, once again, now it looks like he's committing a little bit more to moving out across the map. We definitely recommend that he does not fully engage this. There are 3 cannons over here to defend this for a little bit until the army can get into position. Colossus are on the field, extended thermal lance on the way. That's going to be exactly what WhiteRa needs to counter these Hydras at this point in time. And I think that that tech was just revealed. And once again, very late expansions out of all of our players in this game. This 4th base coming down at that 20-minute mark. You'll generally see a 4th base out of a Zerg player way earlier, as early as about the 12-minute mark. I'd say anywhere between 12 and 16 minutes is kind of that standard 4th/5th base timing for the Zerg player. Surprised to see him only now taking his 4th. It looks like he is looking to double expand now because he does not want to fall behind in that base count at all. 57 to 54 harvesters on the field. A Spire and Infestation Pit coming down. Looks like our Zerg player was banking a little bit in the way of resources. Just wants to be able to spend those as soon as he can. WhiteRa not going to have any of that though. Going to be again pushing out across the map. This is actually before this new base has kicked in. So this is kind of like this last little attack wave before he will sit back and macro up a little bit once again, I feel. But once again, if this attack does fail, WhiteRa will probably just fall home, count his losses a little bit, and try to do just trying to macro up off of that 3rd base. And he's actually might want to consider taking a 4th at some point too, as his main base is beginning to get mined out. Our Zerg player is trying to run out of his base to get a nice concave. A couple of force fields go down, not the best force fields, however, but the Zerg player just does not have enough to engage his army right now. And even more reinforcement units coming up from that zone like a watchtower. And once again, I feel like WhiteRa is just going to go ahead and take this game. Indeed, there is the GG out of our Zerg opponent. WhiteRa, once again, having such an interesting game versus Zerg player. These games have been anything but standard, going for that double Stargate. I loved that decision out of WhiteRa. The Zerg player reacted very well to it, but WhiteRa just continued to barrel Void Rays down his opponent's throat, and at no point in time was the Zerg player able to get kind of that critical mass amount of Hydras, because WhiteRa just kept picking just enough of them off to stop him from being able to do that. Once again, if I were to change anything about that game, though, I would love WhiteRa to have gone Phoenix at some point in time to counter those Hydralisks, as Phoenixes, for those of you who do not know, are ridiculously good against Hydralisks. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Coffee Break, and I thank you for joining me here on the Coffee Cast. I'm going to go ahead and pop out here for the night, and once again, thank you for joining me here. If you could go to coffeebreak.weebly.com, that's coffeebreak with a 0.weebly, WEEBLY.com. Check out the community page there and sign yourself up if you have not already. That's a great way to find yourself a coach. It's a great way to find a player to practice with as well. And also, I have a little bit of an event going on for the MLG Winter Championship. You can find that on the front page right there on coffeebreak.weebly.com.